Thank you very much. Delighted to be here. Thank you to the organizers for having me here. I just want to try to answer the question on the program, which is about Chinese forms of soft power already in display in Southeast Europe. Let me just make one introductory point and then try to look at three different ideas. First, the Belt and Road Initiative was originally presented as a link between China and Europe through Central Asia, as far as the road was concerned. Or in fact, it's the belt, but it's the Belt and Road. So, and then also via the Indian Ocean, as far as the sea element was concerned. But now this label, of course, has become a very widespread label, which basically encompasses all what China is doing internationally. So, you know, we're not talking about the same concept. Now, let me look at these 3 points when it comes to China's presence in Europe. China has invested pretty much everywhere in the EU, 28 nations, and of course beyond the 28 nations, including in the Balkans, not far from here. And it has shown its ambitions not just in soft power, which is the question that was asked to us, but also economically and also strategically. So let me look at these 3 points. First, soft power. Coming from Harvard, of course, I have to mention soft power and Professor Joe Nye, who is a great leader for many of us and mentor. There is indeed a China that is now openly present everywhere, and in the world, in the form of cultural activities, media, sports, education, science. This is a reality, including here in this part of Europe. I'm not entirely convinced that this strategy has been successful in Europe, to be honest, but especially if you look at opinion surveys. But meanwhile, China's political system is becoming strikingly different from Western democracies, as we heard from Professor Yan just earlier. So whether this will help China's soft power in Europe and China's image is an open question. Secondly, China's presence in the economic sphere is expanding rapidly. China has been using parts of the international system, including the United Nations system, including the WTO, global trade, to expand its pro-globalization agenda and introduce new concepts, including the Belt and Road Initiative, including the AIIB, which was mentioned earlier. In Europe, it has taken impressive positions in strategic fields such as energy, transport, port and airport infrastructures, automobile, retail, hospitality, and luxury brands, just to name a few. Here I make a distinction between, I would say, business acquisitions and strategic acquisitions, which are more part of a strategy and which have been helped by the 2008 euro debt crisis, which is very familiar to many people in this room, as Greece, of course, one of the victims of this crisis, along a few other countries. So the two questions are, does Europe actually need new infrastructures, especially in this part of Europe, and especially in Eastern Europe? Second question, have Chinese companies created a large economic momentum in the countries where they have invested? Case number one, Piraeus, pretty successful, arguably. And secondly, in general, have Chinese companies created value and helped their acquired brands to expand? Has the Chinese market been open to European companies in a kind of reciprocal arrangement? Have Chinese companies created R&D in Europe? And lastly, have they created jobs? Have the number of jobs being created by Chinese companies increased? So these are questions to be asked. Point number three, I'm conscious of time, China's strategic influence in the world. It is expanding, no doubt. And certainly President Xi Jinping, during the 19th Party Congress, was very keen to explain that China should be at the center, take center stage, that was his expression, play a key role in world affairs. A number of experts have described it as a rejuvenation of the Chinese dream. This is something also very clear. This is a nationalist message that the president is using. And China is expanding its diplomatic presence with the EU as well as individual countries inside and outside the EU. In some cases, it is introducing its own platforms, such as the 16+1, of which Greece is not a member, I should stress. So my question here is, what consequences for the EU, what consequences for individual EU members, with a new risen China, a new world player with obviously expansionary objectives, not just economically, but also in foreign policy areas. So what consequences for European countries? And in areas such as free circulation in the South China Sea, relations with Taiwan, all kinds of things like that. The European Union will have to address these issues as a group of countries. And of course, individual countries have to think about this aspect when they put together their own foreign policies. Thank you.